Test of the English booth. Test of the English booth.
Could you please take your seats? Dear Deputy Prime Minister, dear ministers, dear members of Parliament and dear members of the Committee of the Regions, ladies and gentlemen, I'm extremely glad to welcome you. I'm very glad to welcome you to this conference. Commissioner Oettinger will be with us in 3 minutes, but I think we should really start because the schedule is extremely tight. I'm very glad to have you here and to have this topic in our focus today. I'm representing the region of North Rhine-Westphalia in the Committee of the Regions. It is a region with 18 million inhabitants, and it used to be the heartland of German industrialization based on coal and steel. But we have undergone a tremendous and a dramatic structural change. In the 1960s, there were still 400,000 people employed just in coal. And now we have closed the last hard coal mine last year. And now it's the second wave of transition that is just looming. It's the lignite mining. We are also and now we have politically decided the next exit. So the next transformation is just coming, and therefore it is important to address the people and the needs of the people to get a new perspective now and not when it's too late. That is the one lesson we can draw from our transformation history. And that's why in the center of my initiative that was adopted today by the Committee of the Regions, we really put in the center these new perspectives for the regions. And I welcome Commissioner Oettinger in our midst. I'm very glad that you are here, Commissioner Oettinger. Because we have to help the structural change and the structural reforms that are needed to create these new perspectives right now. And therefore, I welcome the idea of a Just Transition Fund that was established by the European Parliament. I think it's the right idea, but in my initiative, I make some important points. I think it is needed that there is additional money going to this fund. It shouldn't be created on the expense of cohesion policy. We can't play the interests of one group of regions against the other group of regions. We have to add additional funds to the transition fund. I think that's important. Secondly, it is important to intertwin, to interconnect that fund with the instruments of cohesion policy. And from my perspective, it shouldn't be a centrally administered fund in Brussels. It has to be closely interlocked with the regions, because the regions know best how to develop new perspectives for economic prosperity. And thirdly, I think we have to rethink the competition framework, the state aid framework for those regions. We have to make sure that it's possible to lure new industries, new entrepreneurship into those regions, and that's what we have to foster. I don't want to speak longer. I'm very glad that the initiative was adopted, but I'm even more glad that we can discuss it in a truly European context here, because it's not a problem of some German regions, it's a problem of 41 regions that still produce coal in the European Union, and I'm extremely glad that representatives of those regions are here with us. The biggest challenge today is to keep the time. We have so many important people around here, and I'm very glad that we have them, but we have to stick to a very tight schedule, and my rather unpleasant task will be to have a look on the time. I think every speaker will see a clock running down. That's a bit impolite, I know, but it's maybe the only way to get all the voices heard here at the table. And so without any further delay, I'm glad to hand over to Commissioner Oettinger, and will ask him for his opinion on the Just Transition Fund. how he sees it in the context of the multi-annual financial framework and what his perspective is on that. Commissioner Oettinger, please.
Verehrter lieber Herr Speich,
Thank you very much, Mr. Speich, their colleagues, ministers, state secretaries, all participants in this event. This is a very important conference, which is really being held at the right time, being hosted by the Committee of the Regions. In Europe, we have 41 coal-producing regions. And we all know that we need to organize an orderly withdrawal away from coal towards cleaner forms of energy production. The future president of the Commission has announced a Green New Deal. And in the first 100 days, Vice President Timmermans is meant to develop it. Industry, the construction industry, agriculture, the transport industry, and energy will all have a very important role to play in this New Deal. Currently, coal-fired power stations are, of course, still needed. And we need to ensure security of energy supply that is affordable. That is something that Europe needs to ensure. I know there are sectors of our industry, steel, aluminum, copper, where electricity prices are more important than labor costs. If we don't want to accept carbon leakage, we have to remember it doesn't make sense to import steel from China and no longer produce steel domestically. That would mean that we would not be producing emissions, but in China, the per ton emissions for steel production are actually higher because their steel factories are not as efficient as ours. They don't have the same filters that we do. So we have to consider that. So I think in the next 15 or 20 years, we will have to ensure this transition. These regions cannot be left on their own in the process. When it comes to decommissioning plants and also finding new forms of energy and electricity and heat generation, and also restructuring of society, creating new jobs, attracting investment through offering attractive infrastructure, training opportunities, and ensuring that regions are given interesting profiles. This is the role of all regions. But what we need to do is create a network across Europe where we can exchange our experiences and also ensure co-financing through European resources. All of this is necessary. That's why I can support the underlying ideas behind this. We're currently examining the multi-annual financial framework, the budget for the years 2021 to 2027. So really, it's now or never. Now is the time for us to open the door to change, to have clever proposals within this budgetary framework. The Council, next Thursday and Friday, will hopefully be tackling this very topic. And it won't just be Boris Johnson who will be taking up the agenda, or a possible war of Turkey against the Kurds in Syria. I've been listening very carefully as my colleagues and the various services are working to prepare all of the different proposals. First and foremost, we need to think about what sort of solutions we need. What sort of budget do we need annually for the next 7 years? Secondly, where are we going to get the money from? I support what Mr. Speich has said, that we need to think outside of the cohesion policy framework. We're talking about potentially 40 regions that would win and the other regions that would lose out. It would simply end up dividing the European Union, and we need to avoid that. So we need to find, quote unquote, fresh money. So really the question is, should it continue to fall under cohesion policy but take the form of a new project, a new program in addition to the regional policy, the ESF Plus, Interreg, or should it be completely independent? And another question is, should we be matching euro for euro what the member states pay to the regions? So €1 from Brussels, €1 from Warsaw or Vienna, and €1 from the regional level. And we also need to consider something else. I was in Madrid recently. The Spanish have largely been able to abandon coal-fired electricity generation, and they can say that they were the forerunners. They've already managed it. So then, are those who started first with the end of coal perhaps no longer allowed to have access to funding? It doesn't seem fair. I think in situations where you move away from coal-fired or lignite-fired generation, you're still going to have decades of infrastructure around that. We need to think about investing for the coming years. So all regions need to be involved, no matter what phase of the process they're in, whether they're still producing coal, using coal for generating energy, or whether they've already moved beyond that. We need to ensure a just and fair distribution. But there's another problem, and that is Brexit. The British will probably be leaving us. And that means a hole in the budget for the next decade. The British were net payers to the tune of some 40 billion euros, and that's what we're going to be losing. We have to consider there are three main pillars in the European budget. First pillar, agriculture. In order to fill the hole and to find new sources of funding, compared to 2020 and 2021, we've proposed a 5% cut. Many member states are rejecting that proposal of this 5% cut. For cohesion policy, we want to have a 7% cut. This is being rejected clearly by the Friends of Cohesion. And the third pillar, that's Erasmus Plus, Correcting Europe Facility, Horizon Europe, Digital Europe, the defense industries, defense research, migration, help for Africa. If member states were to allow us to simply use 1.0% of their GDP, that would not cover the hole, the gap. So that's why I need to turn to you, the regions. You need to do your bit as well. This brings us to what we call the better spending countries. It's no secret. Sweden, Denmark, the Netherlands, Austria, Germany. And look at my friend here, who's here at the front table with me as an example. The Germans say, for instance, we don't want to cut funding for agriculture, and yet at the same time are willing to take the 1.0%. The numbers just don't add up. We need fresh money. We need to have slightly higher contributions, preferably before the end of the year. No matter what programs we develop, if we haven't decided it all by the end of this year, on the 1st of January 2021, we will not be able to implement it. We will end up with delays. So the time between now and the end of year is decisive for your regions, for the fund, for an orderly exit from coal, and for the general multi-annual financial framework. We need new resources, fresh money, and we need to ensure we don't end up competing between regions, or competing, say, between agriculture and coal, or competing between Erasmus and coal. Now, before I end my mandate as Commissioner, I am willing to put together an initial draft for a sectoral proposal. I will be tabling that. These would be proposals for implementation. Who would be getting what, for what reason, when, and how much? And then it would be up to the experts to consider that. And we'd have to look, of course, at the question of co-financing. This is something that we might be able to examine in November. So I can then offer you that perhaps Johannes Hahn, my successor, who's from Austria, or maybe even myself still, while I'm still Commissioner, will be able to examine this. We might be able to organize a round table. an event that can get the outermost regions and all of the regions, and also pulling in the results of today's event so that we can discuss them. So thank you very much for asking me to join you here today. Again, I'm willing to sit down with all of you. I see there are representatives from coal regions here on the panels. I think we need to sit down together to develop a program that will be efficient, that will work properly, and that will ensure that we can abandon coal in the next 10 to 20 years, while at the same time ensuring that your regions can provide jobs for your young people, can ensure innovation, can attract new companies. I invite you to start with this partnership. Thank you.
Lieber Herr Kommissar, ganz herzlichen Dank.
Thank you very much for those very clear words, and also for making it quite clear to us that the Just Transition Fund cannot be at the cost of cohesion policy. In particular, thank you for offering to hold this roundtable where we can take up these various topics. We very much look forward to the dialogue with you and with your successor. Thank you.
Having said that, I would like to hand over to the Polish Minister of Finance, Investment and Economic Development, Mr. Kwieciński, who represents a country with a special challenge, because there is no other country in Europe where so many people are still employed in coal, in lignite as well as in hard coal mining. So here's a special challenge, and I would be extremely grateful if you could describe the challenge and your political perspective on that.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for organizing this event and for inviting us. I would like to say that this is extremely timely and I think extremely well-placed conference now. And probably this will be the major change that we should introduce into the new financial perspective. We didn't agree our statements, but I would sign under what you've said, and that hopefully will save also some time for my presentation. And that's true. We didn't work together, on the preparation for this today's conference. In Poland, that's true. We have a special challenge related, to this topic, as we have 4 hard coal regions, and we have also 4 regions for the lignite coal. Altogether, this is not 8, that is 7 together, because one of the region, Lower Silesia, Dolnośląskie, has both the hard coal and also, the brown coal. In Poland, we still employ about 100,000 people, in this sector. Although this is substantially less than it was, say, 15, 20 years ago, when we had almost 500,000 people working in this sector. So over the last year, we made a tremendous reduction in that, but that is still 100%. And I would say the importance of that is not only because of this 100,000, because of this figure, but in our regions, especially in Silesia, which is the most recognized coal regions in Poland and probably in Europe now, and this is also a part of the social life. This is a part of culture, and this is also a group very well organized and very, very visible in Poland. So this is not just the numbers which say about the importance, but also the political, economic, social, social position in our countries. And these regions are ones of the biggest regions, in our countries. For example, Silesia, which I mentioned, which accounts probably for some 70% of the problem, in brackets, for the problem of the hard coal in Poland, is almost 5 million people region. So it's like Norway, like Finland, Denmark, whatever. So we are talking about the regions, but they constitute more or less the size of some of the countries. So that is a really big problem for us. But it has also important security and economic repercussions. Why? Because in Poland, 80% of our energy so both electricity and also heat energy comes from coal. And we treat coal in our country not only as a source of energy, we do not treat it also as a part of economy, but this is extremely important element of our security. The reason why we are so independent, especially independent from our eastern neighbor, from Russia, is because we have our energy sector based on coal. And now what is extremely important is the future and of course the goal for climate neutral Europe by 2050. You know that Poland opposed, to sign the deal on that, and this is not because we are against. It's exactly the opposite. We would like to see Europe, but we wanted to have the implementation program for that. Simply, there was no operational program mentioned, by the European Union, which would support achievement of this goal by 2050. And we hope the Just Transition Fund can be such a financial tool. When we look a little bit back, and you remember that at certain point of time, the Cohesion Fund was created in order to interconnect Europe, in order to supply accessibility to all the regions, to all the countries of the European Union. I can see a similar challenge now. Just Transition Fund is now needed in order to achieve this very ambitious goal. And fully support. This should be made out of fresh money, not in the cost of the existing funds, whether in the cohesion policy or in the common agriculture policy, and should be a fair size. So it cannot be a flower, to what we are doing. This must be really a substantial funding which would allow this 41 regions to go through this transition. We should, and what should be understood, we have to supply not only electricity but also heat to our homes. I mean, in some countries, especially in the south of Europe, that is not well understood, but at this moment of time of the year, our heating system are working, so since 2 weeks we have to switch on, our heating systems. And we cannot simply switch them off because we dislike, the coal-based energy. This is the matter, this is not only economic matter, but this is extremely important matter for all our citizens. So this transition cannot be made very easily and very quickly. We are talking now about the perspective of 30-40 years. So in fact, what we are doing now, setting these goals and setting this program, this is not the program for the next 7 years of the new financial perspective, but this should be the program with the perspective of 30-40 years. So we in Poland, we very much support. We very much appreciate that the Committee of Region decided, to organize, this seminar today, and we are looking forward, to some fair agreement amongst the member states. In the case of Poland, I mean, we cannot count on such easy renewable resources like for example, solar one. Of course, we now. The number of photovoltaic farms increased some 3 times incomparable, to the last year. We have an ambitious program of the offshore wind farms on Baltic Sea, which would cost us about 25 billion euro in the coming years. But this will not suffice. Still, for quite some time, we will be coal dependent. And we want to use gas infrastructure as an interim instrument for that, especially for producing heat, but also producing heat in cogeneration with electricity. So we count on common understanding. we count on the support of the committee regions for that, because this is not the problem of governments. This is especially program of regions, and we should use existing efficient instruments for implementing that. And what we do in Poland, we do it mostly, through the regions. And the mayors, the marshals of our regions can tell you about that during the today's session. I'm sorry, I will have to leave earlier to join the ECOFIN in Luxembourg, but I hope that we will continue discussion on the Just Transition Fund, and I hope that I will manage to convince my colleagues, especially from the north of Europe, to work with us on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. I think your statement has shown very clearly the magnitude of the challenge, and also that the instruments we apply should match this kind of magnitude. I think that's the important thing ahead of us, and therefore we have to convince others. But again, it's not a Polish or just a German challenge. It's a challenge that applies to many regions in Europe, and I think Poland, as you have made very clear, is the one that has to deal with the biggest of those challenges. Thank you very much for being with us.
Yeah.
Und damit darf ich das Wort.
So now I'd like to give the floor to Minister Hasselhoff, who's from one of the Eastern German Länder, another area where they're moving away from coal. I think it's important to say for this region that the coal industry, but in many cases, is the most important industry in terms of job production, and particularly in terms of good, well-paying jobs. So it's a real challenge to ensure to keep this type of competitive jobs as one moves away from coal. So, Minister, I'd like to know, where do you think Europe needs to offer its support? A number of decisions have been made at the European level. Where do you see the need for support from Europe in supporting this structural change?
Ja, Präsident.
Thank you very much, President, dear colleagues here at the panel, ladies and gentlemen. I think my comments are fully in line with those of the previous two speakers. In terms of structural policy, coal, particularly lignite energy production, in particular in the 4 Länder of Germany that are most affected, is so important that we think that we cannot manage it without full European support. Especially when you consider that energy policy and this energy transition, as it's being called, is also meant to meet climate targets. And we can only meet these climate targets if we look for solutions together. So these 41 regions in Europe need to stick together. We need to really stand up for our rights, to ensure that we receive support, funding, planning for all of the regions. It's important for all 41 regions in the European Union. I can use an example. For us, coal as an energy producer is not just 40% of all of the energy we produce, but it's also the basis for the chemicals industry that exists in our region. This is particularly important for the new German states in eastern Germany. This is closely linked to the coal-fired power generation. Not just because of the price developments of energy, we see that the future of the chemicals industry in Europe will be affected. We also need to consider the importance of political stability in these regions. And I'm going to say that loud and clear, because we are currently having regional elections in our regions. And in those areas where we see that coal is on the way out, there is a threat to stability. They're calling into question our democratic basis. And populists are trying to make the most of this unstable situation, trying to instrumentalize the whole debate. So this means there's also a political responsibility that we have. We also have the climate targets in line with the climate policy of the European Union, and also all of the democratic requirements. They're all tied together. There's both direct and indirect jobs that need to be maintained or somehow subsidized. And all of this can only be done within the framework. This cannot be done within the framework of what's currently being offered in the EU. New jobs can only be created when the necessary framework in the EU is expanded to ensure that companies are willing to invest in our regions and create new jobs. Something that's above and beyond the existing aid regime. This is something that we need to discuss urgently with the European Union. We need to develop a strategy for all 41 regions. All projects should, single projects or isolated projects for investment will not lead to success. Commissioner Oettinger has already made this point. We're already experiencing the transition. If we want to meet the needs of our climate policy and our employment policy, we need to have solutions. Often, there are issues that need to be dealt with under national legislation, but national legislation is very often based on European directives and guidelines. So everything that we can get from the European Union side is welcome, whether it's environmental protection, climate issues. All of this really needs to be considered. We need to receive assistance from the EU level in order to ensure that we can receive the necessary investment. My final comment. All of this will only work, as Commissioner Oettinger has already said, if we avoid competition between the different regions who are affected. Fresh money needs to be freed up. And the funds need to be managed in a decentralized way, not in a centralized, bureaucratic way, but decentralized, so that we can really make the most of the experience on the ground and ensure that we have the right sort of links with the EU to make sure that the monies are used correctly. And I think if these three things are done correctly, so proper framework for support, planning being accelerated, and specific help for the regions with decentralized management, for fresh money, which will, that only if all of those points are met can we really meet our objectives. Those are the points I would like to make at this stage. We all want to be successful, and so we all need to stand together. Thank you.
Haben Sie ganz herzlichen Dank, Herr Minister.
Thank you very much, Minister, for reminding us of those very important points. So aid, decentralized approach, and fresh money. I'm very glad you raised the whole question of the political dimension as well, of course. Major structural changes will often lead to political reactions. And if you don't believe that, you just need to look at the regions in the UK where structural changes were introduced and in many cases led indirectly to Brexit. So you can really see the results of that.
That we have discussed intensely on this panel the link from the Just Transition Fund and cohesion policy. And I'm grateful that in a way we have, well, the Mr. Cohesion Policy of the European Parliament at our roundtable. The president of the regional committee, Monsieur Omarjee, and I would be extremely grateful if you could elucidate, well, the state of discussions within the European Parliament on the Just Transition Fund and its link to cohesion policy. Thank you very much.
Monsieur le Président, merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Your Excellencies, Ministers, Committee of the Region members. Now, I'm in a slightly difficult position because I cannot give you a direct answer to a question which, in reality, the speakers lost the microphone.
De discussion formelle.
There hasn't yet been a formal discussion in the European Parliament. We have not yet received a regulation on this question. So I can give you those principles that we support, and I can also talk to you about discussions we've held with the Vice President designate of the Commission, and some members of the European Parliament. We need a real revolution here. That is necessary because European economies and the European regions, well, their structure has grown up over time around the development of fossil energies, fossil fuels, and in particular coal. The construction of Europe itself is very much linked to coal, the CSC. Now, my second point is that just now we're at a time when we all agree that we need to exit from a model that no longer has a future. We need to move to a decarbonised society in order to meet climate change objectives. Now, that's all very good, except that the European Union needs to equip itself with the means to implement these objectives. What is the situation at the moment? Well, things are very vague, and there's a lot of concern as to how this revolution can be paid for. Well, the budget. The minister from Poland was quite right. This whole issue is going to be around for decades. So we're talking about a fundamental revolution that is going to need budget support, which is big enough to meet the challenges. So time will tell. We will see how negotiations go on the MFF. But this political challenge can only be met or cannot be met with a small EU budget. The budget has to be increased. And even if the European Council has the intelligence to follow the Parliament's recommendations about an increase in the budget, even then that will not be sufficient. Then the second point, the cohesion policy has to meet the new objectives and new challenges. The treaty states this in Article 174. It says that particular attention shall be granted to those areas where industrial transition is taking place. And we try to reflect this in our regulations. And discussions are underway at the moment on CPR and on ERDF, and there we have proposed that 30% be earmarked to Objective 2. But this is in a framework which we're used to anyway. It's the sort of usual framework, the cohesion framework. But what we need is additional means, additional resources. Now, these complementary additional resources must, when they are implemented, they too have to respect the cohesion goals that we're all very much attached to. And this is what I am saying to the Vice President designate, Mr. Timmermans, and what I will also say to the President of the Commission when I meet her over the next few days. That's a very important point. I come to a third comment now. The regions need to be accompanied. They need to be supported. And I've met with a number of these regions. Many of them are still dependent on coal. Many jobs are dependent on coal. But nowhere did I hear any opposition in principle to the objectives. But they just say, we need the means. Give us the resources that will enable us to bring about this transition. We need economic support. And we must limit, as much as we can, the social costs. In another sector, agriculture, I can remember industrial change in many European regions. I come from the island of La Réunion, and I can't give you the exact figures, but there were many sugar plants, maybe 40 before 1950, and now there are 2 sugar plants. Well, the social costs were horrible. So support is vital, economic support, but also social support. Needless to say, the continental, if you like, coal regions, the central regions are involved in all of this. But we mustn't forget the island regions. They too can be vulnerable, fragile, and highly dependent. Now, this may surprise you, but many island regions are highly dependent on coal today, and they must not be forgotten. Then also at the same time, as we're seeing sort of loss of belief in the nuclear industry, so we need to invest hugely in financing research for innovation in renewable energies, which of course brings us to back to my initial question, the one I asked at the very start. Budget, your EU budget. It's all very well to launch major new green deals and programs, but if the resources aren't there, it will be no good. So we have a big fight ahead of us, the budget battle, and everything is conditional on that. I listened to Commissioner Oettinger. He said that there are sectoral proposals in the pipeline. I'm glad to hear that. Speaker's mic has gone off again. It will be certainly a good opportunity for the Regio Committee to point out that the principles of cohesion are sacrosanct, but at the same time, cohesion cannot carry the can. It cannot be expected to do everything. Additional resources are vital. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for putting our question into a wider context and at the same time reminding us on the elephant in the room, and that is the future budget of the European Union. You're absolutely right. I mean, there are many things that we want to accomplish, but we need to make sure that the financial framework matches those kind of desires. Thank you very much. I'm now handing over to Deputy Minister Stankov. He is the Deputy Minister of Energy of Bulgaria. And we are very keen to know from him what the situation of coal mining is in Bulgaria and what his special perspective is. I have to remind all those who come that we are really running out of time. I'm very sorry for that. So if you could be to the point, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Should I keep shorter than 3 minutes or just to keep the 3 minutes? No, that just a joke. Maybe with the opportunity to save time, the colleagues from Poland mentioned a lot for the coal regions. The situation in Bulgaria is not different. Of course, yes, the colleagues from Poland are depending more than 80% from production of electricity from coal. In Bulgaria, during the winter time, we have dependency 60%. The other period of time is about 46%. Of course, we tried to decrease this dependency with overachieving our renewables targets. From until 2020, 16% renewables. We achieved almost 19%, but we still need energy for producing, for the citizen, for everybody. And of course, at the moment we're writing a lot of strategic documents. And what we are writing inside is that Bulgaria, at the moment, as a net exporter from energy, will keep the production of electricity of coal. So far, we cannot find other solution. What could be the solution in the nearest future? Going from coal to natural gas, helping the households going and of course, we have to be sure that for looking this solution of this problem, it's not a country problem, it's a regional problem. Thank you very much for organizing this. Of course, when we are looking for solutions, I think something is happening. No? Looking. Okay. Okay. Looking for solutions always need money. Of course, that's that. Thank you. And of very important to mention that. Show me that I have to finish maybe in 1 minute. The budget, of course. We show the decrease the budget of cohesion policy, and we want also to say that we cannot accept any further reduction. We gonna support the idea for additional funding, for new money, which will be directly given to these regions. Of course, keeping also the voluntary act from the member states how to proceed, and of course involving the citizens and the regional governments into this process, because they have to be sure what and in which direction they want to proceed. I think I have additional 10 seconds. Very important, something very important for Bulgaria, and I will finish, is the carbon leakage, which was mentioned also by the colleagues before me. Bulgaria is really on the corner of Europe, and we have the problem that at the moment our colleagues from Turkey, North Macedonia, Serbia are starting opening mining sector and producing and constructing new thermal power plants, which means that will bring us personally in trouble. We have also to think about this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I promise I didn't turn off the mic, but I guess also this room needs some kind of structural change. And then I'm very grateful that you pointed out towards the involvement of citizens. I think that's really a crucial point, and that's why I think regions are so important, because the regions are close to the citizens. So that's why we also have to involve the regions into this process. Thank you very much. I'm now turning to State Secretary Toada from Romania. I'm very grateful that you are with us. And of course, we would like to hear from your perspective, how is the role of coal mining in Romania, and what do you expect of EU cohesion policy? You are responsible for European funds in your government. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I will try to keep it extremely fast, as I think that important news has been already given. And I'm more than happy to go back home and announce our citizens that probably new money will come, and we all realize that this is a process that would take at least 20 years, and not that starting with tomorrow we will tell our citizens in the regions that didn't start it yet the coal mining closure, but it's on the way, that they have to finish it. In Romania, the situation has two sides. One, we have already closed mines, and this triggered a lot of social effects that now the cohesion policy is trying to support and to give back, let's say, some economic input to these regions. And also we have some regions that are now very close to starting the closure, and then they have different worries and different expectation. And also we have our energy security, because also in Romania, especially during winter, we are dependent on the coal, especially in heating. Also on the renewable side, even if we had made effort for reaching the targets, we have another problem related to our networks. Our networks cannot take up the entire renewable that we are producing. So there are a lot of aspects that shouldn't be overlooked. We have to take care, first of all, of the citizens that are still in the regions where the mines were already closed. Romania is facing, besides this effect, also the effect of migration, we don't have workforce. 4 million Romanians are working abroad, so it is worth asking, we have to invest there, or we have to ensure for the ones that are there that have right and fair access to social services, health services, and that we can improve their life there and not expect the 4 million to come back. And also we have the other fold, the ones that will have to go through this transition, but probably, and we hope that they will be more lucky than the others, that they will benefit from such a fund, a new fund, and also complementarity from the cohesion policy, because as the president of the Regi Committee already said, we shouldn't forget about the principles and what is the cohesion policy for reducing regional disparities. So we fully support. We are very happy that some of our comments were taken abroad in the text, and that also we want to work together with you on the criteria. And also we want to mobilize our regions, because they have to be aware and they have to be aboard, because otherwise they will reject it. It was a very painful social situation in Romania, and I think in all the other countries when the mining started closing, and the citizens are now a little bit, let's say, not trusting us when we are telling them, okay, you are going to close, but we are going to support you, that your life will be good. So we are on board, and we want to take the regions with us, because they would be the ones to tell us if we are right or no. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, State Secretary. We have already heard from Minister President Haseloff of the German regional perspective, and now we are turning to the federal perspective and the Federal Ministry of Economics and Ms. Kirsten Scholl.
Vielen Dank für
Thank you very much for inviting me to speak to you here today. I'll be brief as well, because many points have already been made by others. Maybe I could just make 4 points. First, Commissioner Oettinger and Mr. Onagy already said that the regions need to be brought along in the process. They can't be left on their own, and that's quite right. In Germany, that's something that we've done. On the one hand, we've decided to phase out coal by 2031, but at the same time, we've committed to helping the regions in the process. So we will offer them financial support. We've been quite generous in our financial support, and we've even laid this down in law. We want to ensure that jobs are kept in the region. We want to maintain quality of life of the people living in those regions. We're talking about people, and this is a point that was made by others as well. It's all about, as well, helping protect our climate, and I think that can be achieved with the measures that we've proposed. It's also about strengthening infrastructure, promoting local transport, building out broadband so that everybody has mobile coverage, for instance, throughout the country, investing in projects, and all of that can be done with this money. So phasing out coal can also lead to opportunities, and we need to make the most of those opportunities. My second point has to do with structural policy, cohesion policy, what it can contribute. Well, I think we've already seen that there are a number of projects that have opened up possibilities, and we need to continue to make the most of those in the existing framework, but also in the future budgetary framework. And this brings me to the third point, which is the Just Transition Fund. That's a very interesting conversation that's been started by the Committee of the Regions, joined by the European Parliament. There are a lot of proposals on the table there. We're seeing developments. Even the Commission is responding. And it's something that I think we can look at. We don't have a final position on it yet in the federal government in Germany, but we think if it were to be created, it should be an instrument that would be part of the FMA. So it could be part of the structural policy, for instance, sharing resource management, but it should be on top of what already exists. This is a proposal coming. We also need to consider how it's all going to be financed. The federal government of Germany would think that 1% would be a point of departure for discussions. And we'll see what the Council concludes next week in its deliberations. The next point has to do with assistance, the right to assistance. That's very important. A lot of the measures that we want to launch, that we have to launch, are actually very important. We have to ensure that they're done. And with regional funding, they cannot be ensured. There is a proposal that's been drafted by the federal government, which a number of member states has actually signed up to. And I think that's something that we need to continue to promote with the Commission. I think that's a very important point. We need to keep our eye on it, make sure it receives the support it needs so that we can really do the job as we want to. Thank you.
Vielen Dank, Frau Scholl. Auch vielen
Thank you very much, Dr. Scholl. And thanks very much as well for that that last point about the right to assistance. We'll now hear from the Czech Republic. There will be a video statement from the Minister for Regional Development. That video will be played for you now.
Hello, I would like to send my greetings from the Ministry for Regional Development in the Czech Republic. I am truly very sorry that I cannot be with you at the conference. However, coal regions and climate change is important not only for the EU, but also for us Czechs. We have 3 coal regions in the Czech Republic, and as a state, we are trying to help these regions in their transition. Coal mining and regional transition is truly affecting a lot of people. These 3 regions, Ústecký, Karlovarský and Moravskoslezský region, have problems with depopulation, unemployment and a low level of economic activity. We are trying to help these regions. The Czech Republic has therefore joined the EU Coal Region Platform. We think this is an excellent tool for supporting these regions. On the national level, we have drafted a government strategy called Restart, and the goal is to kickstart new opportunities for these regions. We also know that they have great development potential. We also find financial resources very important. We have been trying to help these regions as much as possible from national and European resources. We want to thank the European Commission for allowing us to reallocate resources in the current operational programs for the Restart strategy and for helping these regions. We also truly care about the future, the new programming period 2021-2027. I am very grateful to the new European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and the European Parliament for trying to help our coal regions. We find it very important that these transition funds do not go at the expense of the cohesion policy, because that would be very unfair to other regions in the Czech Republic, which also have to deal with climate problems. These resources need to be on top of the cohesion funds, and they need to go only for our coal regions and other coal regions to prevent political pressure in the member states. I would like to appeal on the Committee of the Regions and all the representatives of the European Commission to hear the member states out, to set up a transition fund that is not at the expense of the cohesion policy envelopes. And the Czech Republic has supported coal regions with 162 million euros from national and European money, but that is not enough to start up a long-term process to help with employment in the regions, to regenerate brownfields and transform coal mining territories. Have a beautiful conference. Please have an open mind and think about these regions. Thank you.
Development in the Czech Republic, and we're very grateful, and I hope you will deliver our gratitude to the minister back home.
Vážený pane předsedo, dámy a pánové, milí kolegové, já bych doplnila ta slova paní.
Dear colleagues, let me add to the minister. Throughout history, the Czech Republic has been an industrial country dependent on coal mining. In our energy mix, coal is really very important. I will just add some figures. There are 20 NUTS 2 regions that we have, and we have 3 coal regions in them. Moravskoslezský region is the 4th, and the 2 other are the 6th that are using coal the most intensely. So the Czech Republic is 3rd alongside Germany in the list of countries most affected by the transition. Since I am here for the Ministry for Regional Development, which also deals with regional policy and coordinating European funds, I would also like to mention that we believe it is important that these funds are not at the expense of the cohesion envelope. If that doesn't happen, it will cause internal tensions between regions, and it could also cause some competitive pressure between regions. Regions might start asking why some of them are getting money and some not. Coal regions have been heavily affected, but there has also been talk about social impact, and the social impact will affect the whole of the EU. I would like to make one last appeal. We truly need the EU's support to manage this transition.
Thank you so much to all of the participants. I think what we have seen here is really a lot of unity in the positions. And I think that is special if you consider how many very different perspectives are here at the panel. So it's not just a Northern European or a Southern European perspective, it's really unity across Europe, if you may, and across very different regional histories and regional traditions. And I think that is the impressive and good result of this panel discussion we had, because what I can promise is that we will bring this unity to the round table that was announced by Commissioner Oettinger. And if it's too late for him to do it, we will remind his successor, Commissioner Hahn, to do it. And I'm sure he will be convinced that it's important to go into this dialogue with the regions, with the member states, to support the coal regions in transition, and to make sure that it's not on the expense of cohesion policy and that it's additional money. I think that's the message we all deliver here, and thank you so much for supporting this. Let me say something very different. Some of you might have followed the news. There has been an attack on a synagogue in Halle in Germany. It's the region of Minister President Haseloff. There have been reported victims. The European Parliament paid tribute to the victims by a minute of silence. And I would ask you all, as long as Minister President Haseloff is with us, well, to raise and pay tribute by a minute of silence and commemoration. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And thanks again to the panelists, and we will now change and go into the second round. Thank you.
so I will. Okay, this is my microphone. Okay. So, dear ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second high-level panel of the Coal Region Committee. We heard from the first panel. Let me start, because as my predecessor Mark Spy already said that the time will be the most challenging even during this second panel. As we heard from the first panel, that the transition of coal regions is not only a matter of energy policy, there is also a need for a holistic and structural and integrated approach. The success of energy transformation depends on the ability of local and regional authorities to manage the change at their local and regional level, considering local limitations and obstacles. In this context, EU cohesion policy has a strong potential role to play. The new Just Transition Fund that the new Commissioner designate, Elisa Ferreira, promised to bring forward in the first 100 days of the Commission should be embedded in the cohesion policy. In this second panel, I will invite several distinguished speakers to explore the specific needs on the ground. In other words, what it takes for a region to articulate a structural response to the transition away from coal. For instance, in Slovakia, we have successfully used a platform on coal regions in transition launched by European Commission to start a broad public debate in our coal region called Upper Nitra. Under my coordination and with the great help of structural service reform support, we have been able to develop an action plan with particular and several projects related to coal region transformation. And we also brought DG Regio to the table. And with their great help, we successfully managed to reallocate the ESI funds to the project contributing to coal region transformation in our coal region. Our idea from the beginning was to balance the negative aspects of the coal region transformation with the positive perspectives. We definitely need to make sure that there will be the life in the region after a coal. We still have a long way to go until the Upper Nitra region will be decarbonized, but we are encouraged by our success so far. Now let me turn to our distinguished panelists and ask them what are the main exit strategies for coal regions and which they need to have to implement them. So as it was already said by my predecessor, the time limit is crucial for us, so I would like to emphasize and stress that each of you will have only 3 minutes to answer. A timekeeper will indicate before your time is up, so please kindly to respect this time. And I will start immediately from the scratch with Mr. Marc Lemaitre, Director General of DG Regio, who is promoting a progressive approach on the topic of cohesion policy, supporting the need to use EU funds to promote economic development in a climate-friendly approach to boost the clean energy transformation. You got the floor.
Madam Chair, dear Denise, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, hello. I'll indeed try to be extremely brief, but I would want to start by recognizing that we have the honor today of having one of the precursors of the ideas we are talking about today in Mr. Buzek, who has been pushing that idea over the past 18 months. Even though it is complicated for me at this institutional juncture to share with you any final thoughts on the Commission side, I will try to be as concrete as possible on where we stand in our reflections. And for that, I will just address 4 very simple questions. The first question, and I'm talking about our reflections on the Just Transition Fund. The first question, what regions? Answer, coal regions certainly, but not just coal regions. We have other regions which will be facing very significant challenges in moving towards carbon neutrality. We need to think about them as well. Second question, and it has been discussed already a lot, what strategy and focus? And we will be hearing more concretely. I'm happy that today it wasn't just all about money at this point. Strategy will be central, and here to us the key words are to think about anticipation and about accompanying the required transition processes. And to us, those transition plans, strategies, which will have to be developed by those who will be leading the change, so not Brussels, will have to have at their core definitely economic diversification and helping workers in reskilling to seize new job opportunities. Third question, what mechanism? To us, what will there be essential is to make sure that those communities and workers we have touched on are empowered and that they have the ownership of these strategies and their implementation. So this, to us, suggests that indeed it has to be about some form of shared management, just like we have under cohesion policy. And I would also say, under this question, what mechanism, that we will have to look for the right complementarity and the right coordination with cohesion policy, because we should not forget that cohesion policy is also there to help generally on adaptation and on transition, and all this should fit very well together. And finally, fourth question, what else? We are in a listening mode there on what else. We have heard some pleas for looking again at state aid rules and seeing whether all this is fit for purpose. We will be listening and we will be reflecting on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thanks for sharing with us your views and experiences, and thank you for respecting the time. Now we are very happy to say that we've got Mr. Jerzy Buzek with us, former President of European Parliament, currently MEP, and former chair of EP ITRE committee, who is a proponent of a new fund that will make a just transition possible.
Thank you very much, Madam. Dear friends, I think that we are not far away from the topic during the previous panel discussion. We are very close. As you said, Madam, exit strategy for coal regions. How to decide, in which way? Let me say thank you very much for DG Regio and also, still former commissioner, because now she is member of European Parliament, also Committee for Regional Development. And we cooperated, as a matter of fact, when I proposed additional money to multi-annual financial framework. Why it is so important, additional money? At the beginning it was 5 billion euro, maybe it should be more, but additional, not to dilute and to mix all of them together with cohesion funds, because we need cohesion funds as it was before, the same level, as much as possible. And this money should be additional for coal regions, because if we want to go forward with energy transition, generally speaking, we should have a specially dedicated money. About 50 million citizens live in such coal regions in the European Union. About 260,000 direct jobs in coal mines, in coal power stations. Indirect jobs, they say 1.5 or 2 million. A lot of, I would like to say. And in next 10 years, we will probably lose 160,000 direct jobs and more than 1 million indirect jobs. So let us to say to our citizens in all these regions, we do not want you to be left behind, and we cannot leave you behind, and we would like you to support you. Let me say, we started, as a matter of fact, 4 years ago. First it was Commissioner Kaniete present in Katowice, but later on Vice President Šefčovič, and we started with platform. Platform for coal regions means that we would like to cooperate between the coal regions. And now, one week ago, we voted in Parliament my amendment for next year, 2020, 12 million euro for cooperation, to exchange the models, to exchange the best projects, because we've got a lot of experiences in the European Union, let's say in, for example, North Rhine-Westphalia and so on, so on. So let us exchange our points of view and to build really strategy for all core regions. So how to manage to build strategy on the level of regions. That's important. Committee of Regions is excellent from this point of view, and also DG Regio is very important from this point of view, because, as you said, Director General, coordination with cohesion policy, additional money, but in coordination is very important. So I think it's not necessary to add many other things. 1 year ago, I proposed 5 billion euro, 5 billion this time, for multi-annual financial framework. Why? Because we need to repeat it in the next financial frameworks for the European Union. Why it is necessary? Because we need for 20, 30 years such a transition money, fair transition, energy transition money for dedicated for specific regions in the European Union, and not to diminish all the structural funds and cohesion funds, not to diminish, because the money are absolutely necessary for any other reason. So from this point of view, I am in good mood, knowing that Madam President von der Leyen mentioned in July in his speech, in her speech, that it is necessary to have just transition fund, and both commissioners, Mr. Timmermans, Vice President, and Madam Simpson, responsible for energy, well, they said more or less, just transition fund should not by any means replace other existing funding from the EU. That's very important. And it was repeated in many other statements by the commissioners. So I think we just should fight for more money, because 5 billion is not enough. We still think that is we can complement it with additional sources from member states, regions, other EU funds, European Investment Bank, World Bank, and so on, so on. It's obvious, but still it would be necessary even to start with more money than 5 billion for next 7 years and 41 regions, core regions. Let us give our citizens from such regions very clear signal. We are with you, not against you in this climate transition.
Thank you very much, Mr. Buzek, for your encouraging words. You were especially underlying a key role of DG Regio and of the cohesion policy, and we are very thankful for that. I would like to hand over now to Mr. Francisco Igea, Vice President of the Junta de Castilla y León, Spain. Sir, you've got the floor.
Muy bien, muchísimas gracias. Bueno, pues es un
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here representing our region and our country. I'm afraid the speaker's lost the microphone. Microphone for the speaker, please. It's one of the mining regions with special characteristics compared to other autonomous communities. In our country or in our region, there has been a significant demographic crisis. These regions are pretty deserted, fewer than 26 inhabitants per kilometer squared. And the effect of the transition in our community has been extremely difficult. You were saying that we have to ensure life after coal, but there is practically no life after coal in our region, so this is a definitive blow for the regions that have suffered from the demographic impact and also have to increase the cost of essential social services provided. And also there's a lack of political influence compared to other more populated regions. These problems can be resolved only in places such as this, the Committee of the Regions, not by citizens alone. That's why it's so important for us to have this new fund and this policy. But we are extremely concerned about the fact that people who have completed the transition are being penalized. We've complied with the demands of the funds of the European Union, and we've closed our mines. We did that in December 2018. It would not be very logical to penalize those people who did the hard work. And that's why this morning and yesterday afternoon, we wanted to highlight our concern regarding the end of paragraph 25 of the opinion. We have a very decentralized state, and that's why it's important that the fund be a decentralized one, because social policies and industrial policies and employment policies are in the hands of the regions in Spain, in the hands of our autonomous regions and governments and parliaments. So it's not very logical to make the fund a centralized one. But I would like to recall, just to keep within the 3-minute timeline, the importance of this cohesion fund in regions such as ours. There was no alternative industry, and the period of transition has lasted for decades. It's taken us decades to bring these regions forward, and I should emphasize the fact that we shouldn't be penalized in the near future.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President, and I would like to pass the floor to our distinguished speaker, Minister of Finance, Mrs. Ana Carcaba Garcia, member of the Committee of the Regions, Principado de Asturias, Spain, who is a proponent of organized energy transition. Madam, you've got the floor. Gracias.
Thank you very much. I'll start by saying something that would appear to be obvious. Asturias is a mining region. Its first license dates back hundreds of years, and Asturias was a region that underwent all kinds of different processes of change, but it is still strongly dependent on coal to generate electricity. Currently, we have coal-fired power generation, but we're not just a mining region. We're also an industrial region, more precisely, a region with a high concentration of intensive industries. We're aware that this is a critical moment for Asturias. We have to deal with the energy transition and the decarbonization of the economy, which is going to involve significant impacts on our industry. Now, this transition needs to lead to neither winners nor losers. We need an agreement on the part of all those involved. We've already started the process. We've done our homework. We would like Europe not to penalize us for being good students. We're trying to achieve a fair transition for Asturias, which transforms threats into opportunities. It needs to use the strengths of the region with regard to energy diversification and the gradual progressive introduction of renewable energies. Our lines of activity, given the challenge, well, we have sought public-private partnerships involving the different agents and that have led to a portfolio of projects that currently represent 58 acts. We've involved companies to facilitate the diversification of their activities. We've opted for training in new employment linked to the energy transition. We're highlighting the potential of our region, and we've carried out internal work within the Asturian government with the cooperation of different departments. We work closely with the bordering communities and those closely involved in this process of transition, mainly Castile and Leon and the community of Aragon. We seek constructive dialogue with the central government, and finally, we want to promote the presence of Asturias in Europe through the Committee of the Regions and also through our constant presence in meetings of the platform of a coal in transition. What are our main requirements? Well, one, basically, we need funds and funding tools for the projects in Asturias that enable us to carry out our activities as quickly as possible and ensure the transition to a mix based on coal to a mix based on renewables, without harming the competitiveness of our businesses and our industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister. Thank you for sharing with us your experiences and views of the region Principado de Asturias, considering all the limits and obstacles of the local authorities. And I would like to pass the floor to Mr. Jakub Częstochowski, Marshal of the Voivodeship of Silesia, Poland, who recognizes the importance of coal, but also the need to look for alternatives.
Witam Państwa bardzo serdecznie. Bardzo się cieszę, że wojsko. Thank you very much. I'm very happy for giving us the floor. Our voivodeship is a very green region, and we believe that the whole project will be successful. For our region, it's not a threat, it's an opportunity to change the profile of our economy. And that's the purpose of the governmental programs and regional and local programs. I would like to share a kind of a reflection. My father was a miner, and I'm aware of what the work looks like. I know it's not easy. However, the transformation, fair transformation, needs some ideas. We have accepted the provisional transformation plan for the region, pointing to the actions that we have to take and where the actions should take place. We see the space for development for the Śląskie region. We concentrate both heavy industry, but also new innovative branches. For the people in our voivodeship, it's the quality of life that matters. And we build our economy, we have built our economy on steel and coal. However, we are transforming. There are some cities like Katowice, the capital of the region, which was heavily dependent on heavy industry. However, it has changed. Now it's the center of new technologies of innovation. It shows that good governors can do a great job. we will really work hard in order to be successful in our project. And thank you for the initiative of regional management of the project. And here we see the success of Mr. Buzek. He started the discussion in the future, and I think he encouraged the actions. We see great advantages of the project. We are a huge region, densely populated, and it can be compared, for example, to the whole country of Slovakia, the population of our region. And I think it's a great potential. We see a great opportunity for new industries that don't need to compete with coal, but we can demonstrate, we can create interesting jobs in other sectors. We are preparing new projects for the new perspective, financial perspective in the Union. We are trying to involve in an intensive dialogue. We are trying to persuade all social partners to carry on the project together. We have set up a special team where everybody was invited. The representatives of all the sectors, of the ministry, of trade unions, but also NGOs, ecological NGOs. So lots of partners that can now discuss together. We want a transparent process, and we want to persuade everyone that our solutions are right. We don't want to exclude anyone. I'm happy that the Commission has involved in those measures. It's a long-lasting process for 2 decades or more. When I met my colleagues before coming here, they asked me, and I asked them, do you want your child to work in the coal sector in the future? And everybody says no. So if we ask the parents in our region, they will all tell us that they want a different future for their children. So we are trying to revitalize brownfields. We are trying to regenerate all the territories where coal mining took place. A lot of such territories are to be managed now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Choltowski. You highlighted a very crucial aspect of the coal region transformation, and that is the broad public debate that I also mentioned in my introductory speech, because we also do feel that we need to incorporate and involve more the social partners, NGOs, regional stakeholders, in order to have the final conclusion more participative and even more, I would say, complex. Now there is a floor to, now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Vondrak. I'm sorry, to Mr. Minister for Economy, Brandenburg, Germany, Mr. Jörg Steinbach, who supports the transition from coal and seeks more concrete steps to be taken in Germany. Mr. Minister, you got the floor.
Okay, thank you very much for this kind introduction. Let me try to make 2 quick statements with a slightly different focus of the same topic than mentioned before. Please do bear with me. I always get a shiver if I hear the word strategy. To say quite honestly, actually it's too late to start to think about strategies. If we haven't got one yet, we will be too late. What we need at the moment already is some kind of an operational plan on how to do it. And to mention one challenge, there are some people who only think in linear systems. Linearity for that process of phase out will not work. Why? The fixed costs which are necessary to do the mining will actually exceed the margin earned by a power plant at a too early point in time, that actually means that we lose the power plants due to the economic feasibility, and that also means that we have a new problem because we won't have enough money earned to do the remedial action to nature, which has to follow the end of mining, just to give you one brief example. Second thing, financial aid and regulations. Christmas seems to turn up accidentally on very short notice, and I think that the first checkpoint which we set in German politics for the exit strategy 2023 will come up very quickly, and we must show that we have already produced industrial workplaces, otherwise we do go out of balance of the joint process of developing new workplaces and also the phase out of coal. Now, if we do have very large projects, then we have the problem that we cannot split them all into existing programs with respect to financial aid. And if we then have the situation to go for individual notification, then this will take 12 to 18 months, and that will be too long compared to reaching the first checkpoint in 2023. So what we also need is help on that regulatory side. We need certain boundary conditions which may give us easier access in terms of financial aid to stick with the time frame. Saved you 20 seconds.
Congratulations, not only because of that.
Mr. Minister, I'm very thankful for sticking to the time, and actually I was very grateful for you mentioned the state aid. That is also very crucial in our topic, and we may probably develop on it more. Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Ivo Vondrák, Governor of Moravskoslezský region, Czech Republic, who has ambitions of making his region the first hydrogen valley in Central Europe. Mr. Vondrák, you've got the floor.
Thank you very much. I had a welcome speech at one computer science conference in Ostrava, which is the capital of our region, and I said, change coal mining to data mining. Of course, I didn't mean that now all our miners are going to be software engineers, but we have chosen the way that is based on innovations and how we should change the industry of our region. And we have chosen the holistic approach to that. We have accepted strategy, restart. We joined our efforts with the Karlovarský region, Ústecký region, and we defined 6 main priorities. The first one is innovative region. It means that we have to change the, let's say, old-fashioned industry to something new. One of them is new energy based on hydrogen, so therefore we are talking about the hydrogen valley. We have to be educated and employed region. It means that we have to take care of our education system. We have to prepare people for this new age of new technologies. Of course, we have to be united region. It means socially equal. We have to be very careful in healthcare and all these things, because change from coal mine to something new means that coal mining should be, of course, based on a social piece. Of course, greener region is something what is very, very important, because we are still very polluted. So this is something what is, again, main topic for our change. And interconnected and smart region. Right now, we were announced as one of the most smart regions in our Czech Republic, and it is about new digitalization of the industry. It is about digitalization. Sorry, about the digital approach to how to serve our inhabitants. And the last thing, but not least, is attractive and culture region, because it means that after good work, you have to have something to do, and the culture is something, and sport is something what is very, very important from this point of view. So this is a holistic approach that we've been working on since I think it's 3 years ago we opened that program. I would like to emphasize that this program is still open. It's not closed. It means that we would like to add new things and we would like to modify it based on what are new requirements in our age. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Governor. I would like to hand over to Mr. Witold Stepien, a Committee of the Regions rapporteur, member of the Łódź Regional Assembly in Poland, who believes that social acceptance of the transformation process is the most important.
Witam Państwa. Zacznę może.
Welcome, everyone. I will go back in time first. The region of Łódź in the center of Poland is the region with the 200 years of textile industry. Łódź was once called the Polish Manchester. We had a lot of textile plants, huge textile plants, not only in Łódź, but also in other towns of the region. In 1990s, a great crisis, low competitivity, the transformation from the totalitarian system contributed to closing down of large textile plants. We had no strategy. The whole process was quite spontaneous. According to the market rules, there was very little control. And even today, we feel the consequences of what can hardly be called a transformation. There was no support from the side of the government. There was no support from the European Union at that time. We had no means to manage this economic disaster. We are trying to draw some conclusions. We are trying to predict the future now. And we want to look at our region of Łódź as an entrepreneurial one. It's a region that supports family companies, a region that draws international companies too. It invests in transport. It is building a very strong university center. It's developing the ICT sector and automotive industry. We also, in our region, there is also Bełchatów, the largest power generating plant based on lignite. Its emissions, its pollution, is really huge. Within 20 years, the resources of lignite should be exhausted and there will be no technical possibility to run the power plant. 10,000 people who are directly employed there will lose their jobs. And if we count their families and those who work with the maintenance, well, around 50,000 of our citizens will lose their jobs and will have problems with employment. That's why we are trying to prepare a strategy now. We are trying to concentrate on new investments in order to prevent a huge economic crisis similar to the one we went through 30 years ago. I'm a rapporteur on the opinion related to the energy transformation. It also relates to the energy use. I'm very happy that the Committee of Regions shows solidarity between the representatives of different regions. I'm happy that there is a support for the new financial instrument, the transition fund for coal regions. The coal regions may have a bigger problem than others. They have a problem concerning energy production, energy generation. They have the problem of the presence of huge coal mines, and it's very difficult to change the economic model. So I'm happy to see the solidarity. I'm happy to see a support for the Just Transition Fund. I think for all the regions, maybe except Brandenburg, it's the time of thinking ahead, thinking about the strategies, projects, and action plans. Of course, the preparation has to be followed by implementations. That means we need financing, we need support, we need the intellectual potential as well. And I think we are now waiting for the implementation to take place.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stepien. You were highlighting specific needs and even the strategies of your region, and I just want to underline the academic sector and the smart specialization that is crucial in the coal regional transformation, because it brings many intellectual inputs in the region itself. We still do have like 5 minutes for the second round of the questions, but due to the time constraint, I would change the management. So I would like to voluntarily ask our distinguished speakers who wants to voluntarily respond to the question that I will ask right now. Should a Just Transition Fund be set up in shared management, or would you prefer a central managed fund? So who wants to answer from the panel, I mean?
Well, let me say the decisions in which direction we should go in each European coal region should be taken by the regions. And let us build exit strategies in all the coal regions. So from this point of view, we are probably, the coal regions are ready even compete on the European level with best possible projects to exchange views. We've got a coal regions platform to compare the proposals, to cooperate very closely. It's a good start point. So I would like to say it quite clearly, because we need support of 28 member states. And probably we should not say anything against interest of 28 governments, because they should decide for all the money. So from this point of view, we need their support, and we should go through the regions and to try to support the idea on the level of our governments. But certainly, decision how to develop ourselves, how to build the exit strategy should be left in the regions, not on the national level. It will be much better from also understanding what for is our program. And let me add, I think comparison the best projects on the level of European Union would be also justifiable.
Thanks for those inspiring words. Somebody from the local or regional authority, Mr. Governor, maybe? Mr. Stepien.
Tak, chciałem się
Just to follow up on what we've heard from Professor Buzek, because in the wake of a debate that took place at the Committee of the Regions, the debate, on my opinion, led to one conclusion where people emphasized that there has got to be a strategy. Projects need to be developed, that we need to take stock of the problems that are present at the local level, and there has got to be a bottom-up approach to those projects that are going to be supported with the European funds. What is important is to tap on the potential that experience that local and regional governments have. Experience is important. There has got to be openness to listen to these ever-rising voices that support action to protect the climate, environment, greenhouse gas emissions reductions. People are in favor of that. We need to listen to their voices. What is also important is to try to tap into the potential of those processes that are happening at a local level. Education, vocal training, reskilling, social funds that are in place and help generate new jobs. These regional hubs of innovation that bring together entrepreneurs, local governments, the people, and academia. That's where the action is. And we think that any intervention at a local level should be targeted to support this positive dynamic. Coordination, decision-making, support from the government level, all that has to be present. Support from the European level is also indispensable.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stepien. I think now we have some 5 minutes left, and I would turn to the audience. If somebody from the audience has a question to our distinguished speakers, please don't hesitate to ask the questions.
Thank you, Denisa. Thank you very much for this very interesting discussion. My name is Eva Srnova. I'm from the Czech Parliament representation and representing one of the states which is very much interested in the proposal of the Just Transition Fund. I have a question for Mark Lemaitre, because he mentioned the eligibility criteria possible, which should be further developed. And I also have a question to Mr. Oettinger, who is already left, so I suppose that maybe Mark could develop on his speech. The first question relates to the eligibility criteria. You mentioned that obviously it would be useful and good to have wider eligibility. Mr. Oettinger spoke about eligibility for carbon-intensive regions. There was there was also a mention on the regions who already closed down their mines and who have already finalized their task. And I would like to ask you how actually it would be possible to provide for certain concentration of the funds, because that is one of the basis for the future, that the money is actually concentrated in order to achieve the change. And my second question, following on Mr. Oettinger's speech, he mentioned, and I'm not sure if I understood properly, that even before his mandate he should be introducing some implementation guidelines. So it would be very interesting to hear more on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eva, for your exhaustive and inspiring two questions. Both of them were asked to Mark Lemaitre. Mark, please, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Well, yes, inspiring and daunting. We are talking about an intention which has been announced by President-elect von der Leyen. So we will have to wait for the von der Leyen Commission to be in place, to let the von der Leyen Commission give the final shape to the Commission proposal, which is to come. And so I am certainly not today in a position to give you any indication on eligibility criteria. What I can do is repeat to you that, yes, we consider that the challenge is broader than just for coal-producing regions, and that we need to look, yes, at very carbon-intensive regions, beyond coal regions. Coal regions being obviously, very much at the heart of this. On geographic concentration, I subscribe to what you said, that obviously we will have to target this specific additional, to use that term, supplementary, complementary support to what will be provided under cohesion policy, to exactly those regions which face the biggest challenge of climate neutral transition. But I would suggest that this will not be decided top-down by Brussels, but that this will be discussed with the member states concerned and with obviously the regions concerned. If I can just prolong for 1 second, I'm very happy generally that indeed the importance of strategies, sound strategies, which are locally owned and which are locally developed, just like in Śląskie, has been emphasized here. Perhaps some member states are already further in their thinking on strategies, but it's good that we all recognize that this has to be the absolute starting point. Secondly, I also welcome indeed this participatory approach used for the development of such strategies involving all parts of society. And I have also liked the examples given related to Silesia on the new economic activities which need to emerge and be supported, and on ensuring that brownfields have a second life in the future.
Since the authorities of European Parliament have been decided, and we will vote finally for the von der Leyen Commission, I can be slightly more brave than you, Mr. Director General. And I would like to say that top-down decisions are not very much acceptable, I think, also by the Committee of Regions. You are official committee within European institutions. So your voice is very, very important. Down, top decision, because our citizens should influence our decisions in the European Union. More democracy, also from point of view of economy. First issue. Second issue, which could be also important, carbon-intensive regions. I think it will be on the list 200 regions out of 300, more or less. Fact, we can dilute completely the idea. Probably in the next financial framework, for example, it could be different in 4 different regions, coal dependent. And from this point of view, I think we should keep, as it is decided in the platform. And platform is European Commission responsibility for core regions. Comparison of the exit strategies, comparison of best projects. So it is a parallel, absolutely parallel activity. And we should say that it could be very helpful, everything what is happening in this platform. So from this point of view, I think it would be much stronger impulse, much stronger signal for our citizens if we keep the core regions in transition. It means 41 regions, not 3 or 4 times more.
Another question, Anna?
Thank you very much. I'm Anna Gmurek from Polish Ministry of Investment and Economic Development. Maybe a very naive question, but I would like to ask probably again a question for Mr. Lemaitre, Director General. What will be the time framework for the fund? It has already been mentioned that the problem to be resolved will need time. It will need decades, and the next financial perspective will probably be not enough. Will there be any clause guaranteeing that the fund will last for years, just beyond the next financial perspective? Thank you.
Budgetary decisions in the European Union, apart from the annual budget, on the multi-annual financial framework, until now have been taken for 5 years, that was the first time, in 1988, or for 7 years. And we understand that the European Parliament is rather in favor of going back to 5 years in the future. So I don't think that it is the practice within the EU, within our shared family, to make commitments which go beyond that. But I think that to everyone here, it is clear that if we set goals for 2050, you know, why stop 25 years away from the goal? It wouldn't make any sense.
Thanks for the exhaustive answer. I was told by Thomas that I should cut off immediately the questions and answer because we still have the time for a conclusion taken by Mr. Vice President Markku Markkula. So if you don't mind, I would like to greatly thank to all of the distinguished speakers for the exhaustive exchanging of views. And I would like to invite Mr. Vice President Markku Markkula to provide us with the concluding remarks. Mr. Vice President.
Okay.
I should...
Thank you, Madam. Thank you. Is there a space here?
Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen, really, I think that this workshop, this conference really has been one of the real highlights of this week. Of course, we had the openings of the week in the hemicycle. We have had our two-day plenary in Charlemagne, and we have had here at the CR premises and in the square and other premises, hundreds of workshops, conferences, seminars. So, but what I had the chance to get the feeling of your discussion and practically a short text messages as well already before I arrived. So this really has been very strong highlight. And I'm especially thankful that we got on this very crucial topic, we got Commissioner for Budget, Günther Oettinger, to join us. We have had several ministers like Minister Kwieciński, deputy ministers from Bulgaria and Czech Republic, Stankov and Kopic, the State Secretary from Romania, Toander, high-ranking representatives of different reasons. Just to mention a few, Prime Minister Haseloff, the Vice President of Castilla y León, Igea, the Marshal of Sicilia, Chelstowski, and ministers from Asturias and Brandenburg, and very many others. And of course, two very important collaborators for us at the COR from the Parliament. Jerzy Buzek, with you, I've worked so much during the years, both in Brussels but in other parts of Europe. We have contributed already during the years, and I was very pleased to hear your strong commitment on this issue. And now, as we actually yesterday heard Mr. Omarjee, the new REGI chair, so to give a very strong statement at our CO plenary. So we will be for sure so that not only this topic, but the regional aspects of collaboration through and with the Parliament and our regions and representatives from the regions will definitely continue a lot. So let me thank as well, especially Director General Marc Lemaitre. So we've worked a lot on the regional policy, and we've created a lot of the kind of new kind of breakthroughs for the cohesion policy, especially for the new role of cities, city-driven regions, how to reduce the workload, the administrative burden, but how to be more target-oriented and sharing the best practices. And on that, as Madam Chair, you mentioned smart specialization. I'm very happy that that came as well on, since by reading and going through many of these regional strategies and seeing how urgently we need those spearheads and then more European partnership based on those. So that brings a lot added value for this kind of work, what our members are doing and can do for the benefit of Europe. And as we have heard today, the topic needs to be addressed urgently. This conference is particularly timely. I was just a couple of 2 weeks ago in New York, where a lot request for action now, if I simplify, but as well we had at least 9 of our members there representing their regions, or as the EU delegation, so showcasing what we have already planned to do, what we are already doing, and now that's to continue, and this topic of this conference is one of those. So the Green Deal, we've committed very strongly to work for that. The structural changes taking place at regions move away from lignin and coal mining require very holistic approach, as has been discussed today, and actually, as is in Mark Spice, in your opinion or in the opinion of Witold Stepien, we've approved those in our plenary during these days, and the content of those, so I even tried to look a bit detailed, so these 2 very heavy dossiers, my remarks on those which are the highlights, and I'm very pleased that the discussion here very much follows what we have agreed by the CR plenary. The speakers have pointed out that the regions in questions also need European resources to finance, take reskilling of the mine workers, but as well many other professionals who are playing a different role now than what be their role in 5, 10 years, 20 years from now on. These messages were very clearly stated in these CR opinions. The CR, we have welcomed the establishment of this Just Energy Transition Fund. I was very pleased to have Jerzy Buzek here, the initiator of the proposal, and as your key messages today, as especially as you deepen the linkages between cohesion finance and this fund. We need to see them, they have a lot synergy, but they are 2 different things. We need to have this additional financing definitely. And the proposal seems to have gained momentum and received attention from the Commission President-elect, Mrs. Ursula von der Leyen. Moreover, as well, Commissioner-designate Mr. Hahn, and in his work for the coming budget and administration business area, as he has announced, he sees a need for the legislative proposal for the Just Transition Fund. Of course, taking Mrs. Ferreira, the Commissioner designate for Cohesion and Reforms, we share a lot with her and will definitely work a lot with her as well. But as we need to ask what we, the CR members, can do, and as again, Jerzy Buzek, you strongly stress that we, the CR, we are the official part of the EU decision making. We, unfortunately, quite often we seem to forget that. We're not political statements, but we have our strong role in showcasing what to be done and how we can make, because the reality is that the action is there at the local and regional level. And just to take an example, so that Mr. Steinbach, I remember when years ago we both were developing European engineering education. And now when you are the minister in charge in Brandenburg, so I'm very happy on that, so to recognize, because Helsinki region and Brandenburg, we have very close collaboration and we work very much together. So I would definitely welcome you to Helsinki very soon. And actually our two speakers to the rapporteurs, because we are having now in 1 month's time, 12th and 13th of November, a special Global Energy Awards, the energy team Nobel Prizes awarded in Espoo and Helsinki. So we would definitely like to see you there, and I'm very convinced, we already discussed that the COR needs to contribute, not only that I will be there as one of the hosts, but as well these key rapporteurs should contribute as well. Because that's where we need our visibility. And that's what we can do really a lot. So it's not only coming to a plenary and having a lot of votings in Brussels, but taking our initiatives locally and taking those further, as we've done several times with Witold Stepien on the industrial renewal of your region, Lodz, just to take an example. We also have to make sure that in the upcoming negotiation on the MFF, we will take these elements into the discussion. And actually, as we pointed out already today to the Finnish EU presidency, the Minister Tytti Tuppurainen there, and as we can make new initiatives, thinking about would it be an intergroup on the socio-economic structural change, intergroup by the COR or some other instrument that we can have on this topic, strong activity as well. Just to conclude, I strongly believe that we got a very good positive, clear statement by Commissioner Oettinger when he promised, or should I say requested us at the COR to continue this dialogue, have another meeting where we go deeper on the activities, showcase how we are ready in doing that and how we can be carbon neutral. And then finally to say that it's not only those regions who have the coal mines, but every region, and most of them. Myself, years ago, I was establishing the district heating system for my city, Espoo, part of the metropolitan capital, linking that, and that was based on using coal. And we still have those power plants there. But again, happy to announce, we will do our share. We made an agreement with Fortum, with the city. Fortum is our head office in Espoo, the largest energy company in Scandinavia. We made a clear step-by-step strategy or action plan, not strategy, Jörg, so on, so sorry, action plan that by 2025 we are not using coal anymore. So it means many parallel heat pumps, the whole new system, heating and cooling, biofuel, heat from the wastewater treatments that the new one is under construction, and so on. So that it's not only one action, it's not only a decision, but it really needs to be many parallel activities. With these words, thank you again for everyone participating. Let's keep on moving and making the action as discussed here today. Thank you very much.
So there's a drink outside.